If you're going to do your money management or your financial education at the end, it's not going to happen. I agree that your career is very important, but money should still rank ahead of it, because it's not like you need 40 hours a week to work on your money. You just need enough to just keep moving forward and taking the next step. If you don't, every single day that goes past without you doing anything about it, it ends up costing you.
Have some type of system. Not everyone needs a financial advisor, but everyone needs a financial plan.
You're a novel guy, Glenn, so I'm looking forward to this novel conversations.
I am a novel guy. I haven't been around that long. Let me start with you, Ben.
Tell me.
You're a personal financial advisor. What's the biggest knowledge barrier you see that's holding people back with their money?
I think the biggest one is that people don't realise how important it is to be dialed in with what their plan is day to day, like resetting and resetting their goals and the power that comes with that. Because I think we talk about it a lot as advisors, and people go, oh yeah, having goals is important, but they don't realise that when you've got goals but a really clear plan to get there, you're going to get there a lot faster. And it's easy because life is so busy that life gets in the way. People lose focus, and then they start missing opportunities and making slower progress.
Yeah, 100%.
One for you, what's the most controversial money opinion that you hold?
I think it is, and this is very controversial, and it is from a practicality thing around couples with money. If you are living with someone for more than 18 months, you're effectively, as the law says, married or a de facto couple. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a case for, if we decide to live together, we don't have to share all our money together, but at least have one type of system for the household, rather than, you pay rent, I'll pay the power bill. And that really gets people's up there. It gets up people's goat, if you will.
I think it does make it really hard though for people when they're doing things in different ways and not working together, or they're sort of working broadly together in the same direction, but it's not aligned.
And I'm all good with have your spending account, my spending account, all good, but come on, we both live here. Yeah. Let's have one joint account, even an offset account or a joint account for bills that we all consume. Mm-hmm. But,
it does make a lot of sense.
But controversial for some. The most common money mistake that you see millennials making?
I think it's probably...
We're not doing good at this rapid fire, are we?
Look, I think it's probably tax and not really understanding tax, because it is quite confusing and a little bit complicated. And I think that people are always looking for this quick fix sort of silver bullet when it comes to the end of the financial year. But what they're missing is the bigger opportunity when it comes to their investing and being really smart and strategic with their tax, where they own their investments. They don't realise how much of a difference that will make, probably not in the next 12 months, but looking into the years ahead at how things compound, because it is too hard, goes in the too hard basket, and people just end up burning cash as a result.
Yeah.
One for you, what's the hardest financial concept to explain in your books?
I don't know if you found this, but honestly, private health insurance in Australia.
I didn't try.
Yeah. What a mess.
Yeah.
You've got readers that are maybe new to money. How do you explain private health insurance and how the system works really simply? And it was very hard to explain, but also comparing superannuation funds. When I help people look at comparing their super funds, all the different fund websites, I used all publicly available information, not like software that we use in advice land.
Yeah.
And it just was so hard and confusing to find the information.
Interesting.
What's the best piece of publishing advice you've received?
Look, I did have a think about this one, and I think it's maybe it's a little bit cliched, but it's like, start with the person that you're actually writing the book for. Have a really clear avatar as to who this person is. And I have found that really helpful when writing my books, because if you get stuck in a tricky point and you're going, should I include this, or how do I tackle this particular concept? If you think about that person and how you'd explain it to them, that I found for me that things just tended to flow from there.
Who do you write for?
It's a little bit different for the different books. And I sort of broadly had it for my first book, Get Unstuck, which I put out first in 2018. And then when I wrote my second book in 2023.
Are you collecting books, are you?
I'm trying. I'm doing my best. But I had a specific avatar, which was, I just thought of one of my clients, this couple.
Yeah.
And then when I wrote Virgin Millionaire, which was intended to be a bit more aspirational, I had a client group again, but it was just a slightly different one because I wanted to really talk to the psychology and the mindset and the drivers for people that wanted to, do significantly better than average and the sorts of things that they think about.
Yeah, awesome.
Look, your books are known for straight talk. What or who inspired your writing style?
Well, this is interesting because, we're on novel conversations with authors. I don't think I'm an author. I'm just a guy out there doing my podcast, helping people with their money. By the way, I'll put all these thoughts into a book.
Yeah.
So I think there was a couple of things. I was sick of people saying, Glenn, what do you think about this topic or this topic? So I'm like, I've got all these thoughts. I'm going to put it down into a book. And if people ask me, what do you think about this? I say, all my thoughts are in this book. And
easier. Then you don't have to respond to the emails.
No, but honestly, I get people slide into my LinkedIn all the time and say, hey, Glenn, I'd love to catch up. Yeah. And, I hate the word pick your brain.
Yeah.
And hear your story. Yeah. I literally have sent people 3 different episodes about my story.
Yeah.
And I say, if you listen to these episodes, write 10 questions, I'll come and have a coffee with you. How many people have actually responded? Did the work. Anyway, so I just wanted to consolidate all my thoughts and my view on money and then investing in the other book and, the career book, because I think the best investment asset we've got is our ability to
100%.
Generate that income. Yeah. So it was just more, all this information's here, let's catalog it.
Yeah, love it.
First thing you splurged on when you became successful? Mine was my watch.
Nice, yeah. I love a good watch, but mine was travel. I think that for a long time, working pretty hard to build my business and, do all the things like writing the books and, it takes a lot of time and a lot more time than I thought. And I think that a lot more time than most people think. And so once I started building some momentum, did some travel with the family, had a couple of young kids by that stage, just particularly coming out the back of COVID, took a good chunk of time off and went and saw some places that I hadn't been able to see before.
Yeah, awesome.
What's one thing about money that you wish that you knew when you were 20?
Automation, quarantining money, and set and forget, removing me from the process.
Love it. System. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
Yeah, that's right, James.
Gold. Yeah.
What's the most memorable feedback that you've received from a reader or podcast guest?
Well, I have had a number of people that have read books, then implemented all of the things and read the books when they were probably not the ideal candidates for getting some financial advice, but they put the systems and the structures in place, started doing some investing, set up the banking buckets, and then they've come to us, sometimes 2 or 3 years even down the line looking to level up. And for me, that's exactly why I wrote the books in the first place, that I think as financial advice evolves, it does get a little bit less accessible to people, but that foundational element is still so important. So it's so awesome to see that. And then these people are really dialed in and allows them to get quicker results when it comes time to going to that next level.
Yeah, sweet.
Biggest lesson transitioning from a financial advisor to your current career?
I think the biggest lesson is whether I was talking to clients face to face or talking to a group of people, you have to actually still remember I'm in the money world every day. And whether they've listened weekly to the podcast or they have come in for advice, you have to just kind of almost forget things and be like, okay, they are at a level that I'm not at. People the same. So I think that's the biggest lesson for me, that not everyone reads investing books or reads the AFR every day.
Yeah, it is hard to de-jargon, and that's something that in my presenting at workshops in particular over a lot of years and look at the feedback and people are going, too much jargon. And I'm like, what is the jargon? And I would literally call people up and go, what is it? And I still remember one that this lady smashed me on the feedback, too hard to understand. So I called her up and I said, what was the jargon? And she said, blue chip. She's like, didn't understand it. And you just take for granted that because you are talking about it all the time that everyone knows that, but everyone doesn't know that.
100%. What's your dream podcast guest that you haven't interviewed yet?
Well, I haven't interviewed you yet.
I'm in the business of making dreams come true, Ben. I don't know. Any real people?
Look, I'd love to interview someone. I don't have actually a specific person in mind, but someone that can explain tax in a way that's easy for people to understand. I've spoken to a lot of people that are brilliant about tax planning and tax strategy.
Earn money, give the government some. Next question.
See, this is why you're at the top of your game, Glenn. Same question back at you. What's a dream podcast guest you haven't interviewed yet?
Look, I've got two, if I may. The first one, he's an entrepreneur. His name's Jeff Bezos.
Right.
So a few people may have heard of him. That would be awesome. But the second one, my cousin, I'd love to sit my cousin down and be like, he plays sport. I'm like, how do you manage money? How do you manage all this stuff? And my cousin, LeBron James.
Right.
So I'd like to interview him as well. But on that, I've had probably the biggest money name in America on my podcast as an interview, right?
Yeah.
Awesome get. It was great. It was good discussion. But it kind of means nothing because if I did an episode, how to buy your first home faster, and it was just me talking, that would be more popular and get more listens. So I don't really care for the big names.
Yeah, that's, I think, why I partly struggle with that question as well, that it's like, it doesn't really matter who's doing the talking as long as people are getting practical things that they can take away and implement quickly.
I've always wanted to do that. Let's continue the conversation. How do you think financial literature evolved from traditional advice books?
I'm not too sure what traditional advice books actually are.
Maybe like the dummies or a textbook?
I know that the classics like Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, yes.
That was the book that got me into advice, actually. My grandma didn't know anything about finance, didn't have any family members in finance or anything like that. And my grandma gave it to me. I was about maybe 15 or 16 and started reading it. And it's just like this light bulb just went off in my mind. And then I started reading, and then Peter Lynch, Beating the Street, like Peter Lynch from Fidelity, the fund manager.
Or even like Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Old school.
Yeah. And maybe it's evolved with the accessibility with technology and the internet and all that, and like less gatekeepers and all that stuff, to Aussie dudes writes practical books to help people like us and aspiring wealth accumulators.
Well, I think The Barefoot probably was the one that opened the door for the like contemporary finance books in Australia.
Yeah, potentially.
I can see obviously Blockbuster. And then I think then we've sort of got this new wave of sort of younger. Are we young? I think youngish authors.
I'm under 30. No, but I think that's it. It was like it has evolved from big end of town control. Like you look at mainstream media. When we grew up, there was 5 channels that you got to choose from. Yeah. And you were fed Paul Clitheroe or Koshy. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. But now it's fully democratized and I just think it's great. Yeah. What inspired you to write your books?
Well, I think when I wrote my first book, I sort of wanted to prove to myself that I could. I think that was part of it. I definitely wanted to create some foundational knowledge for people that could help them progress on the journey. But like, I failed English at high school.
I'm not good at England either. Like, I couldn't even read the briefing document properly.
And I think when I started my business, and then I was doing this business coaching group, and there were a number of people that had written books through that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, I don't know that I'd ever really thought about writing a book, but then, talking to some of these people, I'm like, oh, they can write a book. Like maybe I could write a book as well. And so I was really fortunate that they had this great coach around writing, a guy called Andrew Griffiths, written a ton of books himself. And yeah, basically just knuckled down, followed the process, and then went from there. And then as it's evolved, I suppose it's probably more about targeting specific things that I think people really struggle with financially. Replace your salary by investing,
which is hard.
If it was easy, we'd all be rich already, right?
That's right.
That's why we've got jobs. That's why people listen to the podcast.
But that's it. It's like, yeah, you need, if you want results, you have to sacrifice.
You have to be smart as well, and you have to be focused. There's definitely an element of that you need to sacrifice some things, but you've got to sacrifice some time to not just let stuff slide, because when you're not focused on it, that's when you start to get this drift, and then the drift, you're missing opportunities. And like with money, it's like opportunity costs, and people don't think if I invest $50 a week or $100 a week or $500 a week, whatever it is, it's like in 12 months you'll have a bit more money, but it's not about that. It's about how that bit more money will grow for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. People don't realize that opportunity cost.
And the time's passing anyway, right? So you may as well do something.
100%.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
What about you? What was your inspiration for the books?
I think, like I touched on earlier, like here's a concise manual of my thoughts. But it really came to a head. I was walking through the Qantas terminal at Sydney Airport, and I saw the bookshop, and I just had this vision like, oh, it'd be so cool to write a book and have it here at the airport on the stand. And I had this exact vision. It's like, I didn't want the traditional kind of portrait book. I wanted a bit of a square book. Yeah, it's a square book. It's got sort your money out. Like, I'm going to put all my thoughts in.
Yeah.
And then I was really thinking like, oh yeah, I've totally got a book. And then I think in 2020, this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened. Within 10 days, I had 3 publishers approach me.
Wow.
For a book deal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, I want to do this. But I want it to be square. Wiley were awesome, and they gave me a square book called Sort Your Money Out.
Awesome.
So, and next time I was flying, I went in the bookshop and it was sitting there. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
It is quite cool.
Got a question for you. Community feedback when you are writing. How does that shape your work?
We get email, like just random emails in from people that the common themes that people ask about, that it really highlights that they are truly the most sort of confusing or most misunderstood areas, and therefore, they're areas where we can add a lot more value back to our broader audience in explaining. And it's actually interesting now that we're 10 years in content, essentially this year, 10 years in business, but it has also evolved and changed, and based on what's going on in the markets. And clearly we've been through quite a bit of disruption, and COVID, and low interest rates, and then inflation, and then higher interest rates, and all of the things in between. And so it's interesting to see how those trends go. And sometimes people go, well, how do you do that much content? But the reality is I could do 10 times more content, because there's just so much stuff that people want.
People are like, oh, how do you get topics? I'm like, that's actually the easy part.
Yeah.
It's called user-generated content.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, what are people talking about? All right, let's talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. What's been the most surprising about the response to your book specifically?
Yeah, I think, and you touched on it before, you'll get someone write in and be like, hey, my sister or my brother or someone got this book for me for Christmas 3 years ago. And I was in a mess, and I followed the steps, and I've just got my first home. And it's just amazing that the time's passing, there might need to be sacrifices, but there has to be intention where people get dialed into their own money, life, and career, and literally follow the bouncing ball. And we say this stuff in this order because on balance it works for most people most of the time. Like, you're in debt and you're living week to week. I'm going to go out on a limb and offend you and to say, maybe try my way, because your way sucks at the moment. And you want my advice. I'm telling you, try this way. If my way doesn't work, you can go back to your way, but you haven't had that much success. So, and then literally last week I got a message on Instagram. Oh my gosh, Glenn, I'm so sorry. Sort your career out and make more money. It's been on my bookshelf for 2 years. I've just opened it and I feel so bad for neglecting it. This is the best book I've read on work and career. I'm so sorry. So the cool thing about books is such a long tail, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I find that with going back to that earlier point, that when people are like, I get that saving's important or investing's important, I'll use the framework, but I'm just going to change these 3 things.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then you don't have a proven system. Like if you try and change it, then it's just going to make it harder to implement as well. And so, look, if you've got something that's working and it's working really well, don't change it.
And that's, I'm the same with listeners. People write in like, what do you think? I'm like, I think you need a system that works for you and that's getting you results. My system might not work for you. If yours is working, double down.
Yeah.
And I always say, have a strategy, however small.
100%.
Because you just need that framework. I want to just go back to the writing and the personal stories. Like, how important in your writing was the personal stories?
Typically, the areas that we cover off, they're the ones that people find the most confusing, or I suppose the most fundamental. And so typically when I'm trying to write about a particular topic, I would think back to a client that we helped in that area and essentially what were they finding challenging, what did they really need to know, and what made the difference to their results over time. And so I think that's the biggest thing, that if we're trying to focus on like practical outcomes that people can get, you build it from what worked for other people, because there's no point reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, I actually probably my first book overshared too much about my own personal situation. It's so wild.
Yeah.
I was like talking about life insurance, listed my own health exclusions.
Yeah.
Might edit that out in post. But yeah, I think in the career book, I talked about my own experience, because the career book, I'm talking to aspiring people who want to dial into their career, not just be on the treadmill, who want to turn it up to 11. I talked about my own experience of imposter syndrome in a real tangible way.
Yeah.
So not only personal stories of me saying I'm no different than you, with stories of real clients and listeners. So I think it's really powerful.
One of the questions that I'm keen to get your thoughts on, but like, is around, what's the advice for people that are looking to do content or write books in this space? And I think on that point, like, I talk to a bunch of people that are considering writing. They're like, there's enough personal finance books out there, or there's enough money podcasts out there, but everyone's perspective is a little bit different. Everyone's story is a little bit different. And so no one's heard someone else's story before until you tell it. And there's a lot of value in that.
But I think it is so personal. For example, like someone could literally say to both of us, how do you guys work together and be friendly when we're competition? Where I can't compete with Ben Nash because I'm not Ben Nash.
I can't compete with your lighting setup that we were just talking about.
No, you can't. So what I've resolved is, if you are wanting to start your own thing, sure, we talk about the same thing. Guess what? There's no different tax law for your listeners or readers than my listeners or readers, but it's a personality play. And podcasts especially, and if you look at, you could do thought leadership on the future of the publishing industry and all that, it is hugely around the individual now, not necessarily the topic. So I think a lot of our purchasers of our books, maybe 80% know and listen to us or consume us through Instagram, email, podcasts, and maybe only 20% is a cold reader.
Yeah, and I think for that 20%, it's like what they're probably connecting with is not necessarily that you're talking about the tax rules or the investing rules. It's your
delivery,
spin. It's your
style
on that particular topic or the overall.
And I think it's funny as well, because you can't please everyone. There's no way you can, and not everyone's going to like your vibe. And in like podcast land or book land, when I do go through and have a look at the reviews, I'm looking for a trend. So if there's one review, Glen's arrogant, I'm like, oh, that sucks, but sorry, wasn't meaning to be. Maybe my confidence has been confused as arrogance, or maybe
you're extremely confident.
Or maybe I said your money
confident,
system sucks because you keep paying interest each month and you're trying to fix it, but no, your system sucks. Like, that could come across as arrogant. But if there is not a trend of that comment, it's not an actual big problem. It's an individual thing. So I think if you are out there and you want to create your own money content, or if you're a mountain bike hiker and you want to do mountain bike podcast and a book on mountain biking, you have to, one, absolutely know who you're talking to. Knowing your stuff is hygiene. And then I think it's consistency and just look for big trends in feedback, good or bad.
A little bit off script, but what would be one message that you'd love to be able to get across to your readers if you didn't feel like you needed to like sugarcoat it at least a little bit? You could just slap them in the face with a message. What?
Have a system, spend less than what you earn, invest the rest. So I talk in my book about my personal financial plan. I give some, I save some, and I spend some in that order. Like very simple. So charitable giving is big for me. So I'll always give to charity.
Mm-hmm.
Give some, save some. That's investing for the future. Could be short-term savings. Then spend some in that order. Now you might be, I don't want to give to charity. Okay, do what you want, but have some type of system. Not everyone needs a financial advisor, but everyone needs a financial plan. And they might come to an advisor for a season to get set up and some accountability and then on their way. So we have to kind of come in from this big picture concepts, learn these big picture concepts, apply them to your situation, then go and get personal help when and if needed.
Yeah, 100%.
What would you say to that? Like, how would you distill one message?
I think it's that money should be really pretty much towards the top of your priority list, if not at the top. And that's not because money's the most important thing in the world, but it's because money doesn't need a heap of your time, but a little bit makes a real difference. And it's often for people that they put everything else first. They put their family first. They put their career first. All of these things. And then they realize that it's sort of like you with I do the giving, I do the saving, and then I do the spending after. If you're gonna do your money management or your financial education at the end, it's not going to happen. I agree that your career is very important, and your comments about, that it's the biggest lever that you can use to actually get ahead. But money should still rank ahead of it, because it's not like you need 40 hours a week to work on your money. You just need enough to just keep moving forward and taking the next step. With the opportunity cost, if you don't, every single day that goes past without you doing anything about it, it ends up costing you. Yeah. And so I sort of sugarcoat that a little bit, but I just want to say, your boss doesn't care about your money. You need to. That's your responsibility, and you need to get that, but sometimes people don't.
So you've kind of touched in onto a financial literacy thing. At the risk of having a bit of fun, does any stories of the dumbest things that you've seen people do with money? And I say this with the disclaimer that we've all done dumb things with money, but it's also fun to laugh about funny stories.
Yeah.
Because I've got a really funny one.
Okay. Look, I think that probably one of the most common ones that I would put in that category as a dumb thing to do with your money is that people will do things like not claim the tax-free threshold with the ATO so that they pay more tax, and then they get a bigger tax refund at the end of the year. And they don't realize that it's like the ATO is just minding their money and probably earning a bunch of interest on their money as well. That one tends to come up a fair bit. The other big one is probably not focusing on your money enough and then just letting heaps of time pass, missing out on heaps of opportunities. But you've got me intrigued. What's yours?
That's so funny, because I'm like, I'm going to have some fun here. You're like serious things. It's a dumb thing because you didn't know and you're not financially literate. Now, we had someone write in once, hey, I need some help. I just recently purchased a Gucci bag. Secondhand, I think it was like $7,000 on my credit card. And I think it was the wrong decision. How do I get out of this? And objectively, it's probably a dumb decision. I'm not in the business personally of buying luxury items on credit cards when, on the other hand, you've just said you're saving to buy a house. And so, yes. And I think this goes back to the financial literacy that in my book, I talk about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where it's food, shelter, clothing. I do one about money, when you're building your budget, you need your baseline things done, like rent, mortgage, utilities, transportation. Then we might go up to basic comforts. Then we might go up to premium comforts. And a premium comfort could be once a month we do a date night and it's $300, whatever that is in your world. And it kind of goes up.
Like it's a $7,000 Gucci bag.
Well, it keeps going up, and then it's like it could be luxuries. Then at the very top of it, it's the category is literally like whatever. So the problem where people get stuck with their money, they put luxuries, premium comforts, the whatever category in the budget line item of basic needs, and that's when they fall over. We've all been guilty of this. We get confused. We think needs are wants are needs. Like, I really need that Gucci bag. You're in debt already, and you said you're saving for a house and you're struggling with your money. Not a good decision.
But is it true that if you see that Gucci bag on Instagram more than 15 times, then that makes it a good decision?
Is that what the data says, or is that what you say? But that's marketing, right? Yeah. You know, I actually had...
No, that's social pressure. That's not marketing.
But seriously, like, I can see you've got a nice watch there, you capitalist pig. I had to unfollow Omega, Rolex, and Breitling from Instagram. Yeah. Because I don't need a watch worth 20 grand. Like, sure, it'd be fun. So I just had to remove it because it was always like, oh, here's the new moon watch, here's this. And I'm like, nah, distraction. And I think if we take that down further, don't you steal this or you're out of here, is in our financial life, we've got all these messages coming. We've, you know, for the audio people out there, signal and noise. We need to be really focused to understand what signal is and what noise is. Ignore the noise and look at the signal.
And I think it's also that you don't deserve it. It's not that I find a lot of people, they make mistakes, like financial mistakes like that, by going, I work hard, therefore I deserve it.
I deserve a holiday on interest-free and all that stuff.
I think it's like this, I talk about it in my last books, that the stages that people go through, it's like there's a point for that, but you've got to get there as well. And until you do, you want to prioritize some other things.
I guess the next step on for this, someone's conquered the financial literacy, they've got their spending plan, they've got some things happening. There is this, particularly in this climate in Australia with people, I'd say under 40, there is this lack of hope. There is this, I don't know if I'll be able to actually get on top of my financial life and maybe buy that house or buy that first investment property or take the time off the workforce to retrain. What would you say to people around the lack of hope?
Well, I think it's very much a real thing and driven by some data and statistics that show that things are not easy for sure. But I think that following on from what we were just talking about there, about this like a bit of entitlement around finances or, you know, people splurging on fairly like luxury type spending, but then still whinging about the fact that they can't do other things, that those two things are obviously at odds with each other. And I think a lot of people these days are looking at inheritances, and we're about to see this big intergenerational wealth transfer as the boomers sort of pass down all of the wealth that they've built from buying up, you know, properties when they were 2 or 3 times the average income. But a lot of people are banking on that like as an actual strategy. And
as the parachute,
that's bad. Like, and people are living for a lot longer, and even if they don't, it's still bad. Like, that's not a good strategy. And this is why people that win the lotto end up poor. That if you haven't figured it out before you get an inheritance isn't going to, it's like a Band-Aid, you know. So people need to know that they are in control and that it's all possible, but you have to actually make it happen. Yes, property in the median house price in New South Wales is like 13 times the median income. So it's hard. It's a lot harder than it was in the past, but it's doable. People are doing it every single day. And so I find that sometimes when I put content up, because we're pretty sort of, you know, aspirational, I suppose, and talking about fairly, you know, people high incomes and big goals and stuff, but then people going, oh, you can't do it. And you know, it's not possible and people can't afford it. But it's like, if you start believing those people, even if you're not the one that's writing those comments, if you're reading them and going, oh yeah, no, it is really hard, then you're sort of giving yourself permission to not do anything about it. And that isn't serving anyone. That's certainly not serving you.
And I reckon you're right there. Like, you need to surround yourself with people who will champion your goals. If you said to somebody, oh, hey, I'm thinking about buying an investment property, and you might have said that to your mum or dad, they're going to answer from their level, from their risk profile, from their understanding. Don't do that. It's too risky. Where if you listen to your podcast, read your books, join the Money Facebook group and all that, and you said, hey, I'm looking at buying an investment property, you'd get all these positive things. Yep, you can do that. This is the way to do it. And I think that's really important with the hope for tomorrow or the hope for your future. Surround yourself with people that literally will encourage you. And then if you do have well-meaning family members, what I've done in my personal life, instead of saying, hey, mum and dad, I'm thinking about doing this, and then you get their view onto you, which will maybe stop you doing it, surround yourself with people with, I hate the word, but the growth mindset and the someone further down the line. And then when you go to your family or friends, hey, mum and dad, guess what? I'm doing this. I just did this. So I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you and asking you for your support.
What would you say? Because you've got a lot of people that are really just getting started. Have you noticed, like, over the last few years, any shifts in terms of that level of, maybe a lack of hope or the apathy coming in?
It's hard because if you are in a money Facebook group, you're somewhat more engaged with your life and money than when you're not. So I haven't really noticed it. I have noticed legitimate comments that we all notice about increases in everyday items like your insurances, your home insurance, obviously house prices. But I think that's, for my next project, literally talking to the publisher yesterday, I said to her, when I'm doing this, I'm actually going to get a focus group to interview, not from my money group, because I need to make sure I'm not in the echo chamber. That's kind of the challenge that I've got. I've got people that are obviously engaged with their money. Obviously want to do better. Obviously have some type of mindset that's above zero because they've taken the effort to listen to a money podcast.
Yeah, it's not everyone.
No.
On that, what do you think, what areas or topics do you feel like need more coverage in financial literature?
I think it is a lot with financial media. It's the signal versus noise. So the signal is you should live on less than what you earn, invest for your future, pay less tax, do the planning. That's the signal. The noise is, what's the cheapest investment app? What investment options should I use? What about all these micro things? That's where people get so confused and have analysis paralysis. Should I have this app or that app? Should I have this broker or that broker? And they don't take action. That's noise. The signal is those strong things that live on less than you earn, invest the rest.
100%.
In finishing today, Ben, what would you say if I gave you the floor? What do you reckon? What's the silver bullet to solve all our problems? That's what I want to know.
I think you touched on it before, but it's having a good plan and having a system that backs it up. I think you've got to start somewhere. One that works for you. It doesn't need to be my system or my plan. It's like one that the plan that you're excited by, and a system that works. And people think you need to be an expert, but you don't need to be an expert. You just need to get started and then keep getting better and give it a little bit of time and you'll get there.
Last question. Of your books, if someone was watching this and they've not purchased one of your books and they had to start with one of them only, which book would you recommend that they start with?
I think the most recent one, Virgin Millionaire, I think, like to the earlier comments, your writing sort of evolves and gets better over time. And so I think that's probably the best sample from a writing perspective. And then if you like that, then you could go
back to the raw stuff.
Dive deeper. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Benny.
Hey, that was great.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I'll see you soon.